Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to Hope for Your Heart. This is Pastor Calvin Corbett. So glad that you're joining me today. And what an exciting week we have planned on the broadcast today. I want to talk to you today about big faith and big dreams, okay? You know, oftentimes as I work with church leaders, sometimes we want to think small, right? And we're afraid to take a risk. But did you know that there was a survey done by more than 1,000 adults, and it discovered that most people lose their patience very quick. Within 17 minutes, they lose their patience as they're waiting in line. Why is that? People lose their patience in other situations like being held on a phone, 9 minutes, okay? And if we are in a line at a fast food place, we lose our patience in 3 minutes. I want us to have big faith and big dreams, right? You're never going to have big faith and big dreams until you learn to be patient in the right areas, right? Live large by having big dreams, right? You ever wonder how God could really use you? You know, psychologists tell us if you really want to live, you have to learn to have a dream. You've got to have a dream in life, otherwise you're just coasting or just existing. That's good, but it doesn't go all the way. You need more than just a dream. You need to get, even more important, God's dream for your life. Well, what does God want me to do? God's dream for your life is found in not just having a big dream for yourself, but it's found in knowing that He truly does love you. God doesn't share His intimate plans with just anyone, right? Or everyone. He always shares it with those that He really loves. So why am I here on this earth? What does He want me to do? Because if God isn't using you, what in the world is your life being used for right now? Now, I want you to picture this verse. 1 Corinthians 2:9. No eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind has imagined what God has prepared for those who love Him. You see, one of the greatest gifts that God has given you is your imagination. It is the ability to imagine is one of the things that makes human beings different from animals. Animals don't get up in the morning and says, man, I wonder what I can do today that's going to be creative. They just exist, right? You were made in God's image. So like our Creator, you are creative. You have the ability to imagine. It was Napoleon who said, imagination rules the world. Einstein said, imagination is more important than knowledge. Dream about winning the lottery? Well, let me tell you, God's plans are bigger. Dreaming of that perfect body, that perfect spouse, that perfect house? Listen, God's dream for your life is even bigger. Mark 9:23, everything is possible for him who believes. Paul tells the Ephesian believers, with God's power working in us, God can do much, much more than anything we ask or imagine. So today and tomorrow, I want you to imagine how God could use you. I don't want any small dreams about how God can use you. I want you to imagine how God can use you in a powerful way. And we're going to use the backdrop of the life of Joshua. And we're going to pick up the story in Joshua chapter number 1. And let me set the scene. For the last 40 years, Moses has been leading the people of Israel wandering around in the wilderness. Poor Moses, he spent 2/3 of his life in the wilderness. At age 40, he goes to the wilderness out of fear for his life, and he becomes a shepherd, and he takes care of his father-in-law's sheep on the backside of the desert. At age 80, he's given his life mission to go confront Pharaoh and to tell Pharaoh to let my people go. Well, you know the story. 10 plagues take place, and finally Pharaoh says, get out of here, Moses. You and your entourage, you leave. Moses leaves. All of a sudden, Pharaoh has a change of mind. He pursues Moses. Moses has the Red Sea in front of him, and Pharaoh's army pursuing him in back. God does a miracle, and he walks through, and the sea is parted. Moses gets through on the other side, and then the sea closes back up, and all of Pharaoh's army is decimated, right? Drowned in the Red Sea. For 40 years, Moses is leading the people. But we learn now, at 120 years old, Moses dies. Well, who's going to take over? Joshua. That's where we pick up the story, Joshua chapter 1, verses 1 through 11. After the death of Moses, the servant of God, God spoke to Joshua. That was Moses' assistant. Moses, my servant, is dead. Now, there's two words that are used in the next phrase. Get going. Now, imagine that Joshua was like, are you talking to me, God? You want me? You want us to get going? Where are we going to go? Moses is dead. Don't worry, this is what I want. Cross this Jordan River, you and all the people. Now, I imagine, I'm taking some liberties here, but I imagine Joshua is like, all of us? You know, Moses couldn't pull this off, and we tried. Do you know the river is at flood stage? Well, God continues on, right? Cross into the country I'm giving to the people of Israel. I'm giving you every square inch of the land that you set your foot on, just as I promised Moses. Okay, let me take some literary freedom here. Joshua might have said, you know, there are still giants there in that land. And our giant, Moses, is dead. Well, you know, that you just told me, I don't know if you just told me, but how far do you want us to go into the land? Why do we want this land anywhere? Is this land really worth it? Is it really worth going against these giants? I mean, we've been okay for the last 40 years in the wilderness. God begins to interject. From the wilderness and this Lebanon east to the great river, the river of Euphrates, all the Hittite country, and west to the great sea. It's all yours. Certainly didn't tell me all, maybe part. No, Joshua, all. Not only that, all your life, no one will be able to hold out against you. In the same way that I was with Moses, I will be, wait a minute. You know, I don't know if you know this, God, but I'm no Moses. I'll be with you. I won't give up on you. I won't leave you. Be strong, be courageous. Well, wait a minute, Lord. I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling courageous. I'm not feeling strong. You are going to lead this people to inherit the land that I promised to give their ancestors. Give it everything you have, heart and soul. Make sure you carry out the revelation that Moses commanded you, every bit of it. But I have to do all of it? Oh, all the land requires all the obedience, but I'm easily distracted. Don't get off track, either to the left or to the right, so as to make sure you get where you're going. Okay, Lord, I've got it. And don't for a minute let this book of the Revelation be out of your mind. Ponder on it, meditate on it, day and night. I've never been a very good student, God. Don't just study it. Make sure you practice everything written in it. Then you'll get where you're going. Then you'll succeed. Haven't I commanded you? I'm sorry, Lord, what was that you said? Strength and courage. Don't be timid. Don't get discouraged. I'm your God. I'm with you every step you take. Okay, I've got it. I'll get the orders together. Go through the camp. Give this order to the people. Say, pack your bags. In 3 days, we will cross the Jordan River to enter the land that the Lord your God is giving you to possess. Now, as we look at this amazing few verses 1 through 11 of Joshua chapter number 1, I want you to imagine how God can use you. The first thing I take from this story is that you got to let go of doubt. To be undecided or to be skeptical about it. Let it go, right? Doubt is a great enemy of God's dream for your life. Did you know that doubt limits your potential? Doubt causes us to be filled with not only delay, but we will procrastinate. Doubt causes you to miss God's very best. You say, I doubt that God could use me in a great way. I mean, look at me. Joshua had seen the fruit of the promised land, but he also knew the giants of the promised land. James weighs in on this matter of doubt. He says anyone, talking about believers, Anyone who doubts is like the wave of the sea, blown up and down by the wind. They should not think that they shall receive anything from the Lord. I love what one author said. I don't know who exactly said this, but he said, give me the benefit of your convictions. That's if you have any. But keep your doubts to yourself, for I have enough of my own. So let go of doubt. If you really want God to use you in a powerful way, you must be convinced that God is leading you. Now, how would you like to be the follow-up act of Moses? In the book of Numbers, it says, Moses was the humblest man that ever lived. It's like, here's Moses, and Deuteronomy says that he was the greatest man that ever lived. Now he is the most important prophet of Judaism. And then we have Joshua. Oh, great. I've had a little self-doubt and following the leadership of Moses. Not only that, but the assignments that God gave him. There's only one problem, Joshua. When we look at this assignment, Palestine is inhabited by 7 enemy nations, all of which are bigger and stronger than the Israelites. But we're going to take over, right? We're going to take over, and we're going to be the ones who are going to be leading this entourage. Joshua 9, be bold, be strong. Banish fear, banish doubt. For remember, the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. You see, when we're filled with doubt, we're believing that God is not with us. We believe it by ourselves. No, God is with you. So dump your doubts. 4 times in Joshua number 1, it says, be strong, be courageous. It's a choice, just like faith. Now, maybe the reason we battle with doubt is because we're not exactly sure what causes us to doubt. Well, let's go over a few things that cause people to doubt. I don't understand the logic of all this, but a lot of people believe their doubts and then they doubt their beliefs. Why would we have doubts? Well, number 1 is because we constantly rehearse our failures. For 400 years in Egypt as slaves, they were under the thumb of the Egyptian empire. And then an additional 40 years, they were wandering in the wilderness. They rehearsed their failures. Instead of learning from their failures, they kept repeating them and going back to them. It was Thomas Edison who said, I failed my way to success. You can't get around failure, but you don't have to rehearse your failures. Learn from your failures. They are stepping stones to success. Babe Ruth said, never let the fear of striking out get in your way, right? Did you know that although he had 714 home runs, he had 1,856 strikeouts? Yeah, that's pretty amazing when you think about it. So don't let the fear of striking out get in your way. You're going to strike out from time to time. When I think about Moses, Moses was a murderer before he became a great leader. Jacob, he stole his family inheritance. David, oh, wow, that guy was an adulterer. And then he put a man to death who he is having an affair with his wife. Now, that's not good. Abraham gave his wife away, not once, but twice. This is what he said, save my life, take my wife. Man, what a great man of faith he was, right? Paul was a religious terrorist before God got a hold of him. And then you got Peter, right? Peter was a hard-driving, hard-drinking, hard-cussing, salty Navy sea dog. He was a sailor who swore up and down. He had a temper that wouldn't quit, and he was always putting his foot in his mouth. Yet God said, I think I'll use you, Peter. For instance, when God put 2 eyeballs in your head, he'd put them in the front of your head, not in the back of your head. Why? Because he wants you to always be looking ahead. When God attached the 2 ears to your cranium, he attached them facing forward so you could hear what's ahead of you, not what's being said behind your back. You see, God always wants us to be looking forward. When God attached your arms to your body, he put them so that it's easier for you to reach forward than it is to reach backward, because he wants you reaching forward, helping other people out. When God gave you 2 feet on your ankles, did he attach them facing forward or backward? He put them facing forward. You see, he wants you to walk forward in faith, not backward in fear. In fact, your entire anatomy, there's only one part of your body that is facing the past. And that's why we call it our behind, right? I think even in God's sense of humor, he's saying, now, folks, there's some stuff in your life that you really ought to leave behind. Don't let your past doubts, don't let your past guilt keep you from being used by God. God says, I don't care about your past. I want to use you. So don't focus on your failures. Don't constantly rehearse your failures. Another reason that we doubt is because we tend to compare our abilities. I love what Paul says, and I'm so glad that God uses ordinary people. 2 Corinthians chapter 10, we do not dare to classify or to compare ourselves with some who commend themselves. When they measure themselves by themselves and compare themselves with themselves, they're not wise. We, however, will not boast beyond proper limits, but will confine our boasting to the sphere of the service God himself has assigned us to, a sphere that also includes you. Paul says, I'm not too worried about what other people are doing. He says, my job and your job is to do what God's called us to do. And we're not to compare ourselves with other people. They have their thing to do. We have our thing to do. We're not going to boast beyond proper limits, but we're going to boast on what God has done in our sphere of influence. You see, God uses ordinary people. If God only used superstars, not much would get done in his world. In fact, if God only used perfect people, nothing would get done because there are no perfect people. God uses ordinary. God uses weak people. God uses people with problems. God uses people with mixed motives. God even uses dysfunctional people. God can use bizarre people, all kinds of people. God doesn't want you comparing yourself to anybody else. He wants you to be unique. He wants you to be you, so don't compare yourself. So if you are going to have big faith and big dreams, number one, you got to let go of doubt. Number two, you got to look for a promise. Joshua 1:3 says, I promised Moses I would give you this land, so I will give you every place you go in the land. Now, 13 times in the book of Joshua, that word promise is used. If you will summarize the life of Joshua, it could be capture the promised land. That is your promise. It is a promised land. Now go capture it, right? Ephesians 3:20 says, with God's power working in us, God can do much, much, much more than anything we can imagine or think. Joshua had to learn. There is a time to claim God's promises. Look for that promise. God says, I'm giving you this land. I will give you every place you go in the land. Joshua 23:14. Now the time has come to die. Joshua's getting at the end of his life. We're fast forwarding. Every one of you knows that God has given you all the good things that he promised. Every promise he made has been kept. Not one has failed. Joshua received some really cool promises. Let me just give you three. Number one, God promised strength. Joshua 1:5. Nobody will be able to stand against you. You know God's given us that same promise. When you're in the center of God's will, nobody can stand against you. And number two, God gave the promise of success. Joshua 1:7. You will be successful. This is emphatic. Now, he's not promising to make you a success at what you do. That's why you fail. That's why you flop. That's why you stumble, because you're often doing what you want to do, not what God wants you to do. Do whatever God calls you to do and you'll be successful. If you want to be successful in life, it's real simple. Start doing what God made you to do, and you will be guaranteed to be successful at it. You don't have enough time to do things that God has not equipped you to do and not gifted you to do. So promise number one, strength. Promise number two, success. Promise number three, support. I will be with you, Joshua 1:9, wherever you go. So here's a reminder. Always remember what is written in this book. Study it day and night to be sure to obey everything that is written therein. If you do this, you will be wise and successful in everything. General Douglas MacArthur once called Joshua the greatest military leader who has ever lived, because Joshua's life was one battle after another continuously, yet he never gave up. Do you feel like that? Do you feel like your life is one battle after another? Just when you get one problem solved, another one pops up? Just when you get one victory, all of a sudden there's another battle to fight? How do you keep on keeping on? Just when you get victory in one thing, all of a sudden there's another battle to fight. How do you keep going? You do the third secret of being used by God. You lean on God. You see, leaning is more than just believing. It means I'm depending upon Him. Look what it says in Joshua 1:5. No one will be able to defeat you all of your life. Just as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I'll not leave you. I'll not forget you. Now, who or what are you leaning on for strength? What is your source of strength? Is it somebody else? Are you leaning on the approval of other people for your strength? That's a very shaky foundation. People will let you down. They get tired of you depending upon them to hold them up, and then they'll drop you one day. Not necessarily because they meant to. They just got tired. We all get tired. So you just can't trust other people to hold you up all the time. You can't even trust yourself to do that. Have you discovered that you often let yourself down? You do, right? You make promises to yourself all the time that you don't keep. You let yourself down. You disappoint yourself. So if you say, I'll just depend upon me, you'll let yourself down if you do that. Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight. So we've learned so far that if we're going to be successful in overcoming doubt, and if we're going to do all that God wants us to do, we've got to let go of doubt. Number 2, we've got to look for a promise. Number 3, we have to lean on God. And then number 4, it's time to launch out. Launch out in faith. Look what Joshua did. Joshua 1, verses 10 and 11. Then Joshua issued instructions to the leaders to tell the people to get ready to cross the Jordan River. Now, at this time, the Jordan River was about 100 feet wide and 20 feet deep. That's under normal conditions, except this was flood season. Now, I want you to know that God doesn't often call us to launch out in faith when conditions are favorable. He often does it when conditions are unfavorable. If you wait for a perfect condition, you're never going to get anything done. Now, if you know it's the right thing to do, you do it in spite of your fear. You move out against your fear. You do the very best thing you can. Fighting fear is courage. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving ahead in spite of the fear. You say, well, what do I do? When I know it's the right thing to do, but I don't have the faith, you do it anyway. And once you start doing it, the faith will come. The faith comes once you make that step. The miracle comes once you take that step. God doesn't do the miracle first. No, He wants you to take that step out, to launch out in faith. You know, when you think about launching out in faith, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. For fear has to do with punishment, and whoever fears has not been perfected in love. Paul reminds us, God can do anything. You know He can do anything. Far more than you could ever imagine or guess or request in your wildest dreams. He does it not by pushing us around, but working within us. His Spirit deeply is in us and gently works within us. I hope that today's message has encouraged you to have big dreams, to have big faith, that God can use you. He's not done with you. He wants to use you beyond your wildest dreams. Thank you so much for joining me today. So, Lord, I pray that today's message touches the hearts of those who are listening, encourages them to take a step of faith and to walk believing that you can use them beyond their wildest dreams. In Jesus' name, amen. If you'd like to hear this broadcast again, you can have a free download at buzzsprout.com/1890557, or you can listen on Amazon, Spotify, Google Podcast, and Apple Podcast.
Hickory Ridge Community Church is located at 3320 Battlefield Boulevard South in Chesapeake, Virginia. Sunday service times are 9 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. We'd love for you to join us. For more information, go to hrcc7.org. And remember, no matter what you're going through, in Jesus Christ there is always hope for your heart.